Good afternoon, friends, and welcome to another get together where we will talk about everything in the world. And the idea is to move things ahead and give us a lighting of the candle, stepping off into a world that works. So I'm Bill Carell, and I appreciate that you're here today. We may have one more guest coming to join us a little bit later on. And if not, we're going to get into this conversation and have some fun. So we're talking just a little bit before we got started here and to kind of set things up. Who's had some things that were not going their way a lot lately? All right, good. So I'll tell you what, we're going to let you kick off, Shelley, and introduce yourself and tell us what's going on in your world.
Thank you. Shelley Kohler. Advocate for everything business, seeker of balance and truth. And my world is actually going really well, albeit, sometimes bittersweet, sometimes emotional. It is going really well, and I can get into that a little bit later as to why.
I'll stick around. That sounds great. Lisa, how about you?
Well, as I shared with Bill earlier, I managed to back into my own garage this weekend, which was not a fun surprise at all. And it was kind of like the culmination of a week of emotional battering. So it kind of put the exclamation point on it. And it's nothing that I could put it's no one specific thing. It's just dealing with people, trying to figure out how to deal with people on a better level, or just wondering when to speak up and when to shut up is more the point, I think.
You know what? I think you do what you do and deal with whatever happens. Just in terms of who you've been speaking with, is there like a generic description of the types of conversations? Are we talking about folks at the market? Are we talking about folks that you're working with for production of your for your broadcast? What sort of things are you coming up with?
It's family and close associates. So it's just, I think my tendency is to take things personally, and I don't know how to step away from that really well, apparently. And it just it reared its ugly head this whole past week. So, and that's what I mean. I don't know when to speak up or shut up. When what's the difference between being nice and being a doormat? That kind of situation.
So you are 100% judge, jury, and executioner on all points.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess, not that you're asking for a prescription. However, when you make a statement to somebody and elevate yourself from whatever feeling that you just had, the conversation can go someplace else, potentially. If you kind of, are worried that you'll make things worse than they already are, then my advice to you would be count on yourself to get through it, and just, do it in such a way that you don't quit until everybody's happy and satisfied to leave the situation, or you agree to disagree. However, I would never consider you to be somebody who might be a doormat. Ken, you missed a very interesting intro here. Let's welcome Ken Caputo. And Lisa is sharing with us a couple of things that happened to her. Kind of the high point of it physically was she backed into her garage door with her Jeep. Made a little bit of a mess there, and family got involved. And then we were talking about other conversations that she had last week that didn't go so well. And sometimes she was concerned about when to say something and when not to. And I guess that's really kind of the human condition, isn't it? There are people that have an unexamined life that just whatever is on their mind, you hear about it. And, a little bit of them goes a long way sometimes. And then there's other people that if your leg was on fire and they could see it and you couldn't, they might not, might not want to upset you by telling you your leg is on fire, right?
Yeah.
So just the experience of last week, and how is this week going so far? Are we having a continuation of that sort of vibe, Lisa, or are things, moving in a different direction for you?
Well, I think because it's a short week, it feels different anyhow. So today, and I do delve into other practices and such, so it gets me out of it. So, effortless mindfulness is one of my latest discoveries, even though he's been around for a long time, and the practice has been around for a long time. But so that kind of drops me out of my physical and into my awareness.
It's kind of interesting. I'll tell you in a minute what I was thinking about talking about today, and we'll see if it has any kind of resonance with anyone else out there. Ken, you want to say hello and introduce yourself? We are recording.
Hi, I'm Ken, and I'm just happy to be here.
Yes, you are. And so what is your state of being at the moment?
Mine? Present. Yeah, present and listening.
Excellent. So it's been a kind of an interesting week and a half for me too, Lisa. And the challenge, I know, is the one of regarding self as an object, and as opposed to self as a construct that is ongoingly upgraded in every time that I start over and laugh at myself. So a couple of really smart people that I read is the distinction between the undistinguished self, which is a small s, and that's the self that you refer to as a stationary, unchanging, how you are type of person, all that, the jargonisms, to another one that's always questioning, which the questioning leads to a ground under repair, under construction self, which is a capital S. And it's a proper noun because it is a construct that is intentional. It is something that is not there accidentally or because other people said some things to you, and that's where you're stuck. So I don't know if that resonates with you at all, but one of the things that I was wondering was, we've all done a little bit of mindfulness training. We've all done a little bit of reading, the teachings of the Buddha. And we also know that there are lots of conversations that have gone off on their own tangent, from a single source. But the notion that all things are first created in the mind and soul and then created in the world leads to another question. What is it that creates that creation in the mind? Where does that come from? And in terms of listening and judging behaviors and how we speak and what we feel was a successful interaction or one that was not so successful, in many instances, that's the instant feedback that we're getting, kind of like a weather report. It's 86 degrees out, clear skies, sun is shining, and the wind is rustling through the leaves, okay? So in terms of having a capital S self, it relies less on the outward information telling you how you're doing and less on being pleased or satisfied with your own performance, and more on being kind of a curious mind and very inquisitive about what's the nature of life, what's the nature of living, what's the possibility of as Deepak Chopra says, in the field of all possibilities, where do you want to go, with your life today? And so that is a present conversation. That is one that is ongoing in the moment that you're actually engaging it. So having said that, I find it kind of an interesting place to go back to when I notice that things seem to be not working, where instead of power, it seems more like force. It seems like instead of creating something with partnership, that there's something being pushed against that either somebody is not saying out loud or saying too much about it out loud. So I said all of that so that you would have the thoughts that you're now having and find out who wants to share next. All right, Shelley.
Shelly, Michelle, whatever.
Bye, Bo Belly. Yeah.
He's right. so it kind of all flows together because, I'm in a really good space, but the journey here, right? It ebbs and flows. And Lisa, I am so with you on when's the right time to say something. And then when I say something, is it too much? And, what I have been very present to over the past week, with several events leading up to one another and then just kind of falling where they need to fall. And the presence is, I have great awareness, and I'm an emotional being. Some people are all in their heads and whatnot, but I have that awareness. But what my second guest place is my intuition. It's very strong, but I have in the past, like, doubted that. Like, okay, this is what it's telling me, but what if over here, or something is pulling me over there? Usually someone who needs caring, who needs something from, and really listening to my intuition, not from a knee-jerk reaction as to, I can't do that, but like, okay, let me just see what this looks like. And then being very self-aware, and more for me is really tapping into, I call it self-worth, because I sell out on myself, and I have for many years. So tapping into that intuition, listening to it, and not, making it, I'm listening to my intuition, but just like letting it come out and show me that I just need to listen to it more often, because when I allow that to happen, things work out the way they should. Now, that doesn't mean I like them, but they always work out the way they should. And, like you said, Bill, you kind of just have to, when the opportunity is, whether you say too much and maybe you need to retract, you just kind of got to let it go. And that's kind of what happened to me last week. I was interviewing for a team, a position, and before they made their decisions, I opted to withdraw my application because I knew, as to some of your points, there was too much force inside of that. It was gripping me. It was creating anxiety. It was doing all these things. And I'm like, okay, maybe if I wait for the offer and it's good enough, I will take it. And I'm like, no, I know that this is not right. Now, I haven't done that before, so I just withdrew my application. And I cannot tell you the amount of space that it created for me to be inside of what is important. I had a great first day back. So I guess it's not so much the surroundings, because I'm very aware of all that, but it's really listening to me. And to your question, the soul is what drives the mind. It's just a matter of how we choose to listen to it, and then what we let get in the way. Connection. That's what I have been experiencing.
Yes, and? Who's next?
Oh.
Thank you.
I feel like I'm on the couch, so I want Ken to go.
Oh,
not in a bad way, in a good way.
Okay, I was speaking from me. I didn't, that's
No. I just want to say, it's my lifelong quest to experience life from that point, from the point of essence and not.
Yeah. Well, I guess one of the things that's always interesting, and it's a question that if you become aware that there's a possibility of the question of who am I choosing to be, in whatever circumstances there are in my life. So for example, if you choose to be someone who's assertive and, kind of taking a position and staking ground, especially advocating for a cause, which we see a lot of. That's who you choose to be, and that's going to influence the conversations you have and the lens that you filter it through. Whereas if you choose to live life from a place of grace and balance and not taking it personally, that's going to influence everything that happens. If you choose to do no harm and stay laid back and, not make any waves, that's another option, and what's interesting, one of the things that was shared with me was to be open to the possibility of all those things being appropriate at various points, even in one conversation. So, and there are times where you're in what's called a balanced point of awareness, 50% listening, 50% kind of, let's say, speaking or, being active. And, so now you're kind of in that place of, won't it be interesting to see what happens? And then there's other times where it's 70% listening, 30% kind of contribution, and then vice versa. So would it be interesting if you're in dialogue with someone and they're 70% assertive and you're 70% assertive? Now you have the potential for tension. But if you go to 70% listening, like receiving, now you actually are focused on dynamically achieving balance and being aware of how that can change back and forth. In martial arts, it's called push hands. Like the idea of push hands is to maintain contact and the correct amount of tension. So you can't just yield all the time, but you can't just push all the time. You become sensitive to the other person that you're working with. And, when you get really good at it, it can go for a really long time. You can really challenge each other, but it's dynamic and it's engaging and it's fun and it's skillful. And when it breaks, now it's figuring out what broke it so that you become more skillful so you can keep it going even longer. So, so it's kind of a perspective of, it's not an either or, it's a both and all. What, who you choose to be,
Bunch of thoughts while you're speaking, Ken, and especially as it pertains to Lisa's share, when to say something and when not to. That's that dichotomy of two choices, either this or that. And what life is about is being able to generate ongoing possibilities in the face of it seems like there's only two ways to go. And I would submit that whatever comes up to you as a two-way is your undistinguished past speaking to you in terms of what worked out and what didn't work out. It's just a low-level programming that basically says, I can do this or I can do this, and most people stop there. But the real training in life, as Ken is saying, is to create a dance and not have one response or the other response, but to see that that's what your natural thrownness is, to either this or that, and then start asking a question in place of having a response. If you lead out with a question in almost every single circumstance, no matter how tense it is or how laid back it is, that will almost never take it to another, like a DEFCON 3 going to DEFCON 5, right? More often than not, asking the question gives people the opportunity to interrupt their own thinking and now take a look and take inventory in terms of what would be the appropriate response to the question. And sometimes the question is just as simple as, what would you like to see happen? And if things went the way that you'd like to see them, what kind of outcomes do you predict? Those kinds of open-end questions that will allow people to step back from a position momentarily and reassess whether or not there's a new way to address the situation. So in the push hands that you're talking about, Ken, a successful outcome is the length of time that neither person is yielding or failing, right? So if it's a dance in the game, you set up the rules to the game so that in that case everybody knows the rules and they can choose to either win or lose. But if everybody loses because one person loses, then that's an unacceptable outcome in game theory. So what we're talking about in life is that if you can gamify your experience of life such that it is not being processed as the truth or a test of your truth, but it is an experience for you to sit back and say, is it real? Is it true? And start asking the questions that will allow you to identify whether it is something that should be talked about or addressed, or another question asked. So I'm curious, and one of the things that I've noticed is when I am not able to distance myself from a very meaningful, significant conversation at which, at my core level, I know that there are great stakes at risk here. People can die, people can lose millions of dollars, all those sorts of things. And sometimes the training that I got when I was in my 30s was to just plain ask a question when it came down to negotiating an outcome or making a decision. If you make a bad decision, will anybody die? If you make a bad decision, will anybody lose their job or a significant, income? And so like there's this descending thing so that you finally get to it, it's almost laughable. If you make a bad decision, is it possible you can share that as an outcome and have people understand that you're human? So all of these things have to do with, the underlying training that's there. And a martial artist, you've been doing this for 30 years, Ken?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Ish. And all of you have been doing what we've been doing. And the main thing is I want to just point to, if I may, the difference between intellectual training and what we like to call knowledge in terms of the things that we remember, and then more of a physical training, which means that there's muscle memory, that there's memory in the cells of your body. Each individual cell has a place that it recognizes what's happened before. And in that particular instance, if more people are listening to see whether or not they are understanding the other people speaking, then by the time the silence goes away, there's going to be a really cool next sentence in 9 out of 10 instances in my experience. As long as people are not sitting there just waiting their turn to say something, which is really not a conversation. It is, it's a monologue, right? So saying that, in the experience of feeling stress over a decision or a potential, not making the decision and living with being in that state for a period of time, there's always the possibility to make a decision not to make a decision, which is a powerful decision because, Shelley, what you basically did is you said, I'm taking this off the table. I'm not going to play this round. I don't know how I'm going to feel about it next round, but today this just doesn't feel right to me. It's not lining up with my head, my heart, and my gut, and I may not be able to put my finger on it right at the particular time or have a solution to offer as a next step. But no, I'm going to sit this one out. And I think that's a very powerful decision to make. And I appreciate you sharing that.
That's an important caveat to all of this. You have this, you reserve your own sovereignty. You can bow out, so someone, you can listen all you want. And if they're coming from a place that does not feel comfortable to you, then it's just being strong enough. I struggled with that a lot. I would, people would overstep and kind of, I kind of lose myself in their issues, because I was afraid that I wasn't being a good person if I wasn't supportive and listening.
Yes.
But the reality of it is they also have a responsibility. So if you say, I'm not comfortable with where this conversation is go, I'm removing myself from it. If they blow up, that's about them. That's about them not being in a healthy place, and you may not be able to help them no matter what you do. So, so there is that part of it. You see that in martial arts. Someone's being too aggressive. They feel unsafe to you. You don't have to stand there and get hurt, disengage. In a real situation, you can't always do that. But in practice, that's important, important skill not to lose sight of and lose yourself. So.
Yeah, it's the Stephen Covey, why would you ever settle for a compromise? The definition of which is an outcome for which everyone is equally unhappy. when you could go for win-win. And the win-win is that, that's out on the skinny branches of, I don't know how we're going to get there. Mm-hmm. And let's keep talking. Okay.
Yeah.
And then if there's no ground being made and somebody's decided that they're really not going to play that game, then the answer to that is no deal. Okay.
Agree to disagree.
We agree to disagree, but it's no deal. We're either going for win-win. That means where we're both wildly ecstatic about what we've created here because it works so well for everybody involved. Or let's just say no deal right now. Let's not settle for something that's less than the best that we can come up with together.
Very well said.
Yeah. I don't know where that came from. Lisa, in terms of your experience over the last week and a half, I want to report to you, this might be the first time that I've ever seen you in anything less than like completely out of your skin, happy with being alive. Not saying that you're not. However, have you suffered a little bit in the last week and a half?
Have I suffered?
Yeah.
Oh no, yeah. It was a trying time, and I said accented by the garage. You know, it was like I said, the major exclamation point. But I don't even know if it's easy to describe. I mean, because I like to joke too, like the world would be a better place if everybody realized that I'm always right. You know,
I think that's a T-shirt. Yeah.
So when I try to enforce my rightness, sometimes it can get a little bit wrong pretty quickly. But I also, you know, I accept my talents sometimes, or I'm trying to identify some of my talents, which I think discernment is one of them.
Yes.
And so if I can look at a situation and discern what is the correct avenue, and I try to share that with people, and it doesn't go over well, or it's not followed, you know, and that's where I get a roadblock of, do I say more or do I back off, kind of thing.
So the kind of governor for whether you say more or back off is the level of your internal commitment. You know, we all have a commitment to many, many different things in the world. And sometimes the commitment in the conversation isn't to the completion of the idea that you want to get across. There's a stronger commitment to that, which is either to avoid something or to not be a participant in something that may, but almost always, you know, in my experience and with some of the smart people that I've talked to, is that if you're unwilling to say something that's strong on your mind, that you really feel, you know, strongly about, and if you can take the time and language it in terms of your commitment, as opposed to the nature of being right, okay? Human beings stay alive because we have to be right about either fighting or running away, you know, that according to Freud. But the point is that when you're in this situation, if you have the ability to say, if we work at this a few more minutes, we may be able to come up with something where I understand you better, because I don't think I do right now, which is why I'm not sure if I should say something or not. That makes sense?
I just got the big hit too, I mean, so many teachers will say to, you know, step back and look at the bigger picture. So, I mean, it's something that I should.
Yeah, well, maybe. Isn't that a little bit like telling a woman, you know, not to be upset?
Well, it's
only if it's spoken by a man.
Okay.
There's a Tibetan expression that's kind of like a view set point. You just ask yourself a question: Will I be more like the sky, or will I be more like the clouds that come and go? You know, what perspective are you going to take? You know, and if you're looking at someone, even when there's a lot of energy coming towards you, and you have that sky mind, you're choosing an expanded perspective. How did they get here? What could be going on in their life? What are the patterns that led them to this? Who will they be on the other side of this? Now, it's not your little mind trying to solve a big problem. It's your sky mind observing, you know, a moment in time with a much broader perspective, you know, from which to operate. So I always found that question helpful. You know.
So whatever the metaphor is, okay, and Lisa, this is very powerful, because if stepping back and seeing the big picture works for you, that's all that matters, you know. And you know, Ken is kind of adding a little bit more flavor and you know, aroma to it, you know, in terms of old teachings. But the the kind of interesting thing is, how do you get alerted that you're too close and stuck, as opposed to just having an emotional feeling? And I don't know about y'all, but there's sometimes when I'm having an emotional feeling, I'm neither willing to give it up, nor am I willing to be enlightened about the subject, okay? You know, and just screw it. I'm going to get this done, or, you know, one of us is going to be dead by the end of this conversation, you know, that sort of thinking. However, that's not what comes out. It usually comes out with, didn't we do this last time too? Isn't this kind of the same place we ended up with the last conversation about this, you know? And so the whole idea is, unfortunately, the bad news is the key to, you know, getting out of jail or getting out of hell is almost always pulling yourself there one way or another. And if there's a habit or something that you can train yourself to do so that you listen to yourself, listen very powerfully. And I'll say that again, because you will at times be able to hear something that's running in your head and you think it's your thoughts, and mostly it isn't. What if it isn't your thoughts? What if you start to listen to that voice that's saying certain things, not like, this is my mind and my soul speaking to me, but what if it isn't? What if this is what it always tells me when I'm in circumstances like this? What if I were to sustain my activity here? What if I were to ask the next open-end question, swallow hard, and be ready for whatever comes back? I mean, it might be, you know, like playing tennis against Martina Navratilova or somebody like that when you really just picked up a racket for the first time. However, when you step onto a court with somebody like that, you immediately have their respect. You might have their disbelief as well, but you immediately have their respect. So I don't know if that's helpful or useful, but I'm curious, do you have a way that you are notified, you know, when your automatic way of handling something is not giving you a way out of Dodge?
Are you asking me specifically, or
anybody who wants to, but you in specific, since you asked? Yes.
when, more or less, are you saying like when I'm not in alignment with the big S?
It might even be a more visceral than that. Do you ever get angry?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I get the blood right to my head.
So let's talk about that state of being, and how do you talk yourself back in from that? Do you have an automatic way to respond to it, or is there something, you know, that you can do, or is it kind of like new ground for you to look into and see what's possible?
I think it's newer ground because I tend to be a non-confrontational person.
Right.
So it's an area that I am not well versed in, but more situations are happening. Thank you to my teacher, the universe, that is making me take notice more often of it. So, I mean, I'm genuinely grateful for this conversation because I need to know, you know, to have it pointed out and have resolutions from all different perspectives of the three of you is greatly helpful.
Yeah, and there is no fortune cookie here. The you know, if you open the fortune cookie and you look at it, it's blank, and what it's saying to you is your struggle is your struggle. You know, that is the one that the Buddhists say, no matter where you go, there you are. And you know, quite frankly, the very biggest thing to fight against in terms of the whole Buddhist philosophy is the fixed nature and static, unyielding pressure that you create on yourself by that undistinguished self. Did I say that correctly, Ken?
Yeah, it's the yeah. I mean, if you're looking at, you know, the the three paths, which is just kind of asleep and unaware. And then, the middle path where you're actively participating in the world and awaken to it. It's usually, the Four Noble Truths are all about, it's our attachments and our expectations that are the root causes of suffering, just to paraphrase them. So, but those are all human. They're human things to experience. So, it's kind of interesting. I mean, any intense sensation, whether it's a thought, good or bad, a feeling, love or hate, anger, joy, or in your body, intense pleasure, intense pain, they're just signals, for that you can become aware of. That's what I choose to do. It's just, well, what is that? That's interesting. I'm paying attention now, so now instead of floating in the world, you're like, if something hurts, there's a reason. If something feels really good, you should probably be aware of that too, So, and then, but on the other side of it, I think where we get stuck is that space between who's in charge now. What is the, you have the recognition, the awareness, maybe it's jarred into being, but who do you choose to be and what do you choose to do? I can get angry and punch someone in the throat. That would not be a healthy, especially, I've had some training. So, reacting violently in any situation is not really an option that I choose to consider unless it's, life threatening, and even then I want to be a little bit, as graceful and balanced and appropriate as I can,
That's a little different than the way your teacher language is it.
Yeah.
You push me to that point. What you get is all of me.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the life threatening.
End it that quickly.
Yeah. That's a switch that you flip in extreme circumstance. That would be the equivalent of a mom seeing their child running out into the parking lot with a car coming. There's no time to be graceful. You need to stop that kid. You can feel it in my energy, just getting, that is a distinct, line that you cultivate and cross, but the practice is not doing it for everything. And, it's just people that erupt, at other people. They're just on edge and they just blow up at the slightest provocation. This is about, developing a very strong rigor, discipline, and discernment. So that only comes out in the extreme. But yeah, when it's time, it's time. And you get all of them. Yeah.
Again, only one person gets to vote on that. You almost never go out and take a poll.
Nope.
Well,
nope.
Where you utter something to them in Korean that sounds a little something like, I salute you who are about to die, Yeah.
I remember someone telling me as a martial artist, you kind of end up serving a lot of times as judge, jury, and executioner. So someone does something and, you decide to break their leg, you just sentence them to 6 months of being in a cast and immobility and pain. And there was no due process there. It was just you making that decision. So that's a tremendous amount of responsibility, if you lived a life of being appropriate and respectful of the skills you're cultivating.
Yes. So when we used to run around back in the day, this is after college and before I met my wife, I hung around with four guys that were larger than me. I mean, the biggest one was about 290 pounds and 6'8". And then there was one man that was probably 150 pounds and 5'8". And he happened to be at the time like a third dan, black belt. And we had him with us because that old saying in a bar, when you start the fight, you go jump on the biggest guy and try to take him out first. Well, what Jim did, Jim would get in between them and he would basically say, you can step away from this right now and it's not going to upset the rest of your day or the rest of your week or possibly the rest of your month. Mm-hmm. And he just would be very calm about it. But if anybody ever took him up on it and threw a punch at him, he would catch their fist and he would crank it around until they were on the floor crying for their mother. No matter how big they were, once you grab somebody's thumb and start bending it the wrong way, for some reason you get their attention. So, the being skilled at where to hit, how to hit, all those kinds of things. There's a lot of pressure points on the body that can immobilize somebody, and they'll be on the ground, and you won't have to, actually swing at their head or those, as you well know, Ken. So, no, he was a good guy. He was a designated peacekeeper. So
good to have those.
Yeah, it is. It is. Blessed are the peacekeepers, for they keep the rest of us out of jail. So where we are right now, Lisa, I'm just going to take your temperature for a minute based on how you were feeling when you came on the call and how you're feeling right now. Would you say you're better, the same, or worse?
Oh, much better.
Okay.
Much better. Thank you all.
Cool.
All we're doing is talking. We're just talking.
You guys pass.
Yeah. So, a suggestion for you. That one of the things of, like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, where you ask the audience or you phone a friend or those kinds of things. Those are very, very smart things to do when you notice that you're at an impasse in terms of being clear about the next powerful action that you can take. And it might be one that is returning force with force. This might be where you kind of step back. And a lot of people have a wingman or a wing. Is there such a thing as a wing woman, or are they all wingmen? I don't know. But the point is that
wing person.
Wing person. Yes. Okay. So when people are going to be in a situation where there's potential conflict, it's always smart to have somebody else there who knows you well. Or if you're in a situation where you can always defer any action until later on, you've had an opportunity to speak to somebody who like and trust, and you know that they're always going to give you advice that's good for you. So from a place to go and be, we're never more than 7 days away from this conversation, if that's useful.
I do.
And all that said, and you also know that you can call any one of us at any particular time of day and give away whatever struggle you're having in the moment, because almost always it's going to be something that is much more acute to your experience of it than is actually going on in the world, with some exceptions. But for the most part, it might be something that you could have a little transformation activity and then be laughing about, a few minutes later. Maybe not, but give it a shot.
Always.
The other thing that just kind of struck me as you were talking, Bill, is all the best athletes I know, when something goes wrong, they don't beat themselves up over it. They try to recreate the circumstance and practice it the way they would want it to go in the future. And that's always been a very valuable thing, thinking in terms of, the less quantifiable our relationships, our own responses to situations, and thinking we can go back and recreate this in our own mind, and we can reinvent it by, practicing new ways. So I got angry and I said something I really regret. Well, what would I have said instead? And let me replay the conversation, and actually reprogram so that you instill better habits for the next time. That's how those athletes all get good, because the next time a similar situation comes up, they're just more skillful. Buddhism, they talk about that. There's no good or bad. Skillful, less skillful. That's it. Just and if you're less skillful, guess what? You have the ability to become more skillful through intentional practice,
Here comes another lesson.
Well, visualization.
The nature of life, right?
Yeah.
Shelley?
Deepak Chopra, the visualization. Even, I pulled, this journey of my intuition and my struggles, Lisa, have been, I really took them on at the beginning of the year. And little light bulbs have gone off. And, this past week was a much bigger bulb for me, because it was all this culmination of things coming into to my action. And actually, being able to visualize how I was going to be. And along the way, I've just taken sticky notes. And if you can see the wall behind me, every time I hear a quote that resonates or that brings me closer to, that's how I want to be, and what not necessarily how I want to be, but how I would like to respond and things brought to my brain. Bill was saying, call somebody. And a lot of times in those moments, I'm like, I cannot even like fathom trying to put this into words. But one of my sticky notes is, and it's one of those that it's right here. Every master was once a disaster. Persistent, consistent. So just little things that have been dripping into me or breadcrumbing for the past, 8 months.
That's great.
But again, it's also, right, it's a, who do I want to be? And visualizing gives us those scenarios with actually not having to be in them. Like, we know how this is going to go if I do this. Let's not visualize that. Let's go over here. And if I were to actually respond, and that's almost like something dripping into your DNA and into the new way of how you're going to respond in the future and how you would like to. And I don't mind sharing this with you guys and whoever else is listening, but part of my journey was with a therapist, just from no trauma, but just a sense of self, right? And, today she was like, oh, you're settling into the new you quite well. And I'm like,
that's great.
Yeah. So I was like, wow, I feel, even though scenarios over the past week could have been, not traumatic, but just uneasy, because there were also instances in family and relationships that you just take a different place. And it's that push pull. And I never thought about it that way, but that is totally, that brings the balance. And it's never like here, but it's just back and forth. And when we let go of having to be that push all the time or right all the time, that allows for that balance, no matter where it ends, to be present. And which in my mind allows a lot of freedom for that conversation or that scenario to then get to where it can be, where it needs to go. So that's kind of what I just wanted to share. It's nuggets along the way, and everybody responds, and at least you've been doing a lot of work for many years, and Ken, it's just who you are. So even these little nuggets, noon on Wednesdays is just kind of like, okay, it's, my contribution, but also I want little nuggets and be able to kind of put them into my own, journey. So.
Oh, by the way, you really are who you're supposed to be. If you met me 30 years ago, I was an obnoxious, selfish jerk with a serious temper. Like, I started martial arts because I had issues with anger, so it's just all, practice and creating your habits and, and deciding. And it's not easy, it's kind of simple, but it's far from easy.
Yeah. And that's what life is. It is simple, but we create the, kind of things along the way. It's not meant to be easy, but it is. So I just want to share that.
I like it.
One last metaphor that if you engage in every conversation as an adult, as possibility conversation, there always has to be an adult in the conversation for it to be adult. And if you think about it, what's really comical and funny about that is that most of the conversations that are not working are coming from a very young age. We're talking about folks that, again, we have the kind of culture worldwide that doesn't demand a whole hell of a lot more than what you get by the time you're 12 years old. And if you stop and think about that, your brain doesn't start growing and getting wrinkles in it, for the whole rest of your life. But its mass is pretty well set by the age of 25 or 26-ish. Which means at the age of 12, you have all these behavioral tics and habits that are just totally inappropriate for adults. And if you want to have some fun, put a sticky note on the wall to listen for when the conversation is somewhat less than adult.
What age are you?
Yeah, what age is the conversation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the whole idea with all of this is to remain awake, to remain purposeful, and to never confuse, your commitment with the innate desire of a human being to be. I hate it when that happens.
Oh, interesting observation just on the awake thing. I've been fortunate enough to meet some pretty cool people who've done a lot of work over, half a century plus, in these environments. And, it just kind of the very little I'm on social media, you hear a lot of times about being woke or someone saying, wake up. The real people that I've met never refer to themselves as being awake, and they never tell anyone else to wake up. So it's just, be a little vigilant about who you're receiving information regarding this, because it's really easy to talk about, but I don't know, all the legit people that I've met never refer to that in that way. It's just a process of who they choose to be in the world, so just an interesting observation, because it seems part of the culture and the language right now, and I find it curious.
Yeah, the being awake as a state of being is a lot more like being of a curious mind. Okay, mm-hmm. As opposed to always having an answer for every question. Be open to the possibility that the same question has a multitude of different answers. So there's never a need to have memorized your script so that you can, go lifelessly through a set of circumstances and come out okay on the other side. The whole idea of playing fully out, as a human being means that you're ready, willing, and able to grow like a weed, no matter what your physical age is.
Yep.
And again, most people who say that they're awake or woke, they're not. It's pretty low level code to get you to agree with something that they're saying, because if you don't agree, then what's wrong with you?
I think it is. I think it's good that they're thinking about it. It's out there. There's conversation. A big part of it is just being aware that it's, you don't know what you don't know. So now at least you can start the process of finding out what that actually means. And, just, I don't know, you think about things that we said as teenagers. And then you look back like a decade later, you're like, oh my God, how could I think that way? So we're all, with new things, we all go through our teenage phase, and then you just hope that you kind of outgrow it and you mature as you have experiences and meet people or attract people, whatever it is, that can help you, evolve.
Yeah. So I was just calling attention to the idea that many people develop distinctions that they can keep other people in the dark about, just so they can say you're not that.
Yeah. Yep.
And that, you really want to be on your guard. Those are the people you want to spend 0 to no time with whatsoever, because there's no conversation for anything. It's always a conversation that's, in my opinion, that is leading to the same place over and over and over again, just different words as time goes by. So anyhow, I really appreciate everybody's openness today, and we're at the top of the hour. And Lisa, I got to tell you, you're the only one that backed into a garage door in the last week. And thank you for, kind of fessing up to that. That really set the stage here for a lot of things that we could share with you, Ed.
Yeah, thank you for hearing.
You're our friend. Absolutely. So any parting words, Lisa?
Actually, I found out a poem by the most recent saying of his name is Hafiz. He's a mystic poet. I think he was in the 1300s. But and in regards to like accepting all of you kind of thing, like the new discovery of Shelley with her brave intuition, and Ken saying to involve, to look at all of yourself, and then you, Bill, saying, remember there's the child, all those children inside you. So this is called Dropping Keys. The small woman builds cages for everyone she knows, while the sage, who has to duck her head when the moon is low, keeps dropping keys all night long for the beautiful, rowdy prisoner.
It's great.
Nice.
That's cool.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yes.
Shelley?
Just, be present. And what I got out of this is ask questions, open-ended questions. Because as you were saying, there's a million different right answers.
Mm-hmm. What if? Yeah, absolutely. It's good to see your face. I've missed you.
I've missed you too.
All right. Anything else?
I'm good, thank you.
All right. You are, aren't you? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Ken?
Well, there's a lot of yin today, so I'll leave with a yang quote that I just found really awesome. It was from a business guy named Keith Cunningham. He wrote The Road Less Stupid, and very successful guy. Yeah, it's an awesome book, awesome business book. But I was listening to an interview with him, and he was talking about just his kind of the way he approaches relationships in his life. And his quote was, I wrote it down, "I refuse to lower my standards to accommodate your need for mediocrity." It was like, yeah. So it was just kind of one of those, you're talking about boundaries and stuff. And that was like definitive. That one stuck with me. So I'll leave with that.
That's awesome.
Good Post-it note one. Yeah.
So what's kind of interesting, I guess, as a way out the door for me, I'm going to go back to one of the great philosophers in my life, Bucky Fuller. He's talking about the proof for love and the proof for gravity. And what's very interesting about both of these things is we have no question that they exist. And love and gravity are like energies, and neither one casts a shadow. Love binds the metaphysical world as gravity binds the physical world. So when we have the opportunity, this is Bill speaking, when we have the opportunity to love, and we review the sameness between love and light and hate and dark being the same, please choose love. Always and everywhere, in any situation that's not working. If you bring love to the conversation, I believe you'll get out and you'll probably create something that wasn't there before. And that's what I got for today. It's a pleasure being with you again, and looking forward to seeing you next week. And I think Vanessa's tooth, good Lord willing, will be better by then, and she should be back with us again. But in the meantime, thank you all for coming. Have a wonderful rest of the week. And I do love you.
Enjoy all.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, A World That Works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can hear us at exvadio.com/podcasts, Apple Podcasts app, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts.